Hello, 422. How are you doing? Sorry, I might look a little frazzled. I actually just videotaped the resources video right now, so I might get a little confused as to what I'm actually saying. Welcome back. Hope midterms all went well. If you hear a squeaking noise, that is my chair. I am in my office and it's struggling a little bit. I think I said that in the last video. I'm going to share my screen and kind of get into what we're going to talk about this week. But just before I do that, I want to make sure we're all on the same page with some stuff. Let me just cancel that out. All right. Um, we are obviously moving right along. It was great. Actually, I think I said this last time, but it was great talking to everyone. Advisement's coming up pretty soon, so I will be seeing everyone again. Again, if you have any questions, any problems, let me know. Be sure to check your email on the 26th. Jody from the Bird Center is actually going to come on a Zoom and talk to us. I booked that, I believe, for 11:30. He said it will be a half an hour. If we need to talk about anything after that, I would really like everyone to come. I may give you an escape on the blog or on that week, maybe the discussion board. I'll see what to do. I really think it'd be important if you come to the Bird Center session, mainly because awesome resources. They do tons of teacher professional developments, a lot of inquiry-based learning that they do. They have fantastic resources. I don't think a lot of people in the community even know about it. When you end up out in the field, I think they'd be a great resource once the world returns to somewhat normal situations. They do programs for all the high schools. I was just doing an observation at Musselman High School, and with no prodding from me, the civics teacher was talking about how he was sad about in the spring the Bird Center sessions with his AP students had to stop because they were going like once a month, and they do this whole research on the congressional records and such. So long story short, I'll be sending out more information and a Zoom link on that, but that is Monday the 26th at 11:30. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hit week 8 here just to kind of give us a breakdown. Oh, another thing I will make sure to try to get before I say this week was very busy. I'm recording this Friday, October 9th. It's about 6 o'clock. I will try, oh, I lost my train of thought. I'm recording this on October 9th at 6 o'clock, but I'm a little behind on grading in all my classes because I was getting midterm grades completed. I will do my best to have everything graded early next week. I'm going to try to get some stuff done this weekend. That will be like your world history analysis and things like that. Don't throw that book away or anything. If you use, we're actually going to do a Flipgrid that actually gets into that book a little bit too next week, I believe, or it might be this week. Maybe, oh, it's this week. I'm sorry, it is this week. I'll show that to you. I mean, those were books that we were going to look at face to face, so I want to make sure we're still doing some stuff with them. I am going to actually talk a little bit about the U.S. theme assignment also this week, but we'll do that after I talk. So here's the thing. We're going to talk about civics and econ. This isn't going to be a very long one, but it's going to rehash some similar things, but I still want to kind of touch on it, especially because it's actually a very political season right now. The related readings are actually just Zevon chapter 12. You're going to get to pick something from the world history book, but again, I'll talk about that here in a minute. Your blog 7 is on resources. I do want you to kind of know that the blog this week has a little more freedom. I cited some things that I used in the classroom as far as readings, specifically novels or things that I thought I could have used that I just never got the opportunity to do because now I'm here. I just want you to pick something, a reading that you would like to use in your classroom, some sort of either historical fiction, graphic novel, nonfiction, whatever, and blog about it and say what grade you thought it was for and why it would be a benefit. Just remember your audience. Sometimes I think we like to pick stuff. I was this way. We pick stuff that we have in our history classes, and some of it's awesome. But you got to make sure that, if you're doing a middle school class, All Quiet on the Western Front might not be the book to choose when you have sixth graders. Just saying. But anyway. Also, I am actually going to go over the U.S. presentation slideshow assignment today. That is actually a biggie. And I know it says on the PowerPoint, on the syllabus that it is actually due this week, week 8. I am actually going to move that back to November 2nd because I want you to take your time. It's related to Ed TPA, and I want you to kind of just put some thought into it. Plus, if you're like me, you've been very busy, and it just gives you a little more wiggle room. It doesn't affect me if it's due on the 2nd, so I'd rather you just have the time to get it done, especially after I talk about it. I haven't talked about it until this point. There's some listing, and in the resources, I didn't even say Greek mythology. Boom, but that's for another day. I just saw that on there. I knew I made a list, and I didn't put it under the blog. Students love Greek mythology. I don't know why that is, especially middle schoolers. But with all that being said, let me talk a little bit, and then, like I say, I'm going to jump back into the assignment. But the readings this week, and let's see if I can pull this up. And I sure can. Civics. Civics is one of those areas that I think pulls a lot of people into the field of social studies because they had a really awesome civics experience in high school, is a lot of times the case. And that is a very good reason to enter social studies and civics and be very politically minded. Zivan, if you read in the book, he actually gets in there and he likes to start off a lot of times with these didactic, reflective, and effective goals. And just to rehash, your didactic will be like your lower level blooms, your reflective will be that middle level blooms, and effective will be that top critical thinking level blooms. I'm going to read these just because I made them up. I've had them for years, and I'm sure the wordings will be terrible. But, for didactic, it's usually based around something inquiring around the political system. An example, students will be able to describe the major steps in making bills going from the House and Senate to the executive branch and back again. See, there's a typo warning. It just happens. But it's a base level type political exercise, and that's your didactic lower level. And I should say this because I like to get off on tangents. You got to watch with civics. I think a lot of times people think that it's just going to come in and you're going to talk about issues. Know your audience. Some classes like to do that, some do not. This is no knock on any of them, but I was just in a general studies civics class and they just wanted the information. You may find that's the way. I also think sometimes civics can be a little tricky because when you get into the American federal system, it's great when you're talking about the president, maybe a little bit about the Senate and the House, but sometimes when you go off into those other branches, students kind of aren't into it as much, but that's neither here nor there. If you're going to do a reflective exercise, encourage student to inquire into the reasons behind political decisions and the use of power. That's a nice one. I like that one. For example, use a series of case studies on welfare proposals at the community, state, and local and national level. And students will assume the role of legislatures of who can identify and analyze the issues, decide on the cost of each proposal, and decide which will be the most acceptable to voters. That's a great exercise. And you know why that is? Because I used to do something like that. That's your middle level type blooms. That's a political exercise in that connection. I could summarize that a little bit better. When I was in 8th grade, I used to actually take an actual bill that went through the Senate or through the House, or the delegates. And we would actually modify the bill, vote on the bill, and things like that. Or we would pick a bill and watch it go through the House. Sometimes I would pick a bill that was kind of fun, like it might be something related to junk food in schools, or maybe something that's interesting to the students as far as maybe some sort of animal protection, or a cap on black bear hunting, or things like that. That was stuff I did in 8th grade. And again, I have a little more of a middle school background. But anyway, that's a middle level one. And an effective, and I think this is what everyone envisions when they think they're going to be an AP teacher and such, or a civics teacher in general. And remember, and I'm sure some of you will become AP teachers and awesome AP teachers. You may not get AP right off the bat. And I think a lot of people think that that's what they're going to get. AP positions are pretty popular. For a multitude of reasons. There's also a lot of stress with AP classes too, because your students have to score certain scores. So just keep that in mind, but that's neither here nor there, and that's a discussion for another day. An effective goal for an AP civics teacher will be to encourage students to form skills related to human judgment and values. That's pretty straightforward. There you go. Students will review a recent Gallup poll of public attitudes towards foreign policy issues, analyze the testimonial of 3 experts, and decide where they stand both as individuals and as a group trying to reach a consensus about foreign policy proposals. That sounds like some sort of debate. It sounds like some sort of major discussion. Those are fantastic. I think I have said this before with this class, but if you're going to do any type of discussion, make sure it is well organized, well structured, and you have guidelines for how this discussion will take place. Do not let it be just pure chaos and freeform. Socratic method is a nice one. I might get into that a little bit with another one of our resources because I'm looking at a book of Socratic circles, and a lot of people really like the Socratic approach. That may be something you would do. I'll tell you what, I might actually post something up on Socratic approach on the website today. I should have probably prepared something, but I just thought of that on the fly. So, and that's one downfall of being online. I'm not stopping the recording, but I will definitely get you the resource and talk about it next week. There are a lot of different approaches to the organization of a government course. I think it can be boiled down to 5 questions. That's actually not mine. That is actually the National Assessment of Educational Progress. But, you know, and I think these are actually 5 pretty good questions related to doing civics. 1, what's a civic life? What's politics? What's government? You got to know that stuff. I think students like that to an extent. They also like quirky stuff. Like I think sometimes the Electoral College for the pros and cons. I know a lot of people go back and forth on what they like about it and what they don't. But also, I think students find that interesting. Even weird things like the line of succession of a president, like if the president passes away and the vice president passes away, who's next? And of course, the Speaker of the House. And then sometimes I would even show students the whole way down, President of the Senate, and then, you know, the cabinet positions. Even weird number things. Don't take it for granted that students understand how long, you know, representatives serve, senators serve, presidents serve, things like that. I would even do trick questions that students liked, like how long could a person theoretically serve as president? Well, everyone says 8. It actually, theoretically, I believe in the Constitution, is 10, because if a vice president takes over, well, it would be like 9 years and almost, and like right up 363 days or something. If a vice president takes over and the president, if they take over for a president who passes away or leaves office, and that president who is left has served over half their term, the vice president can fill out that president's term and then be elected 2 times on his own. If he serves over half of the term, then he can only run 1 time. So a good example would be LBJ. LBJ took over for Kennedy with Kennedy only having, I think, less than a year left before the next election. LBJ took over, was elected on his own. He could have run again. He decided not to because of what was going on in Vietnam. Students find that stuff interesting, and it is interesting. I think it's interesting, and I'm sure you probably do too. You know, I'm already 1 question, and I can't stop talking. That's why I like this stuff. What's the foundations of the American political system? That's another question you might have to get into. How does the government established by the Constitution embody the purposes, values, and principles of American democracy? I think that's what a lot of people like about civics, getting into those discussions and heavy topic type things. What's the relationship of the U.S. to other nations and world affairs? And what is the role of a citizen in a democracy? It's great. And we did some sources on a lot of this. I think your Junior Scholastic upfronts, they're great for this type of stuff. You can get good debate research. The internet's a wealth of information. iCivics, that's all good stuff. So that's, I think, how you can, if you were going to teach a civics class, I think those are the 5 questions that you would probably address in your class more than any other. I think it's a good list. Squeaky chair. Also, there's a couple of approaches. I was mentioned. There's the operational approach. You know, this is the typical method. It's the, you know, how political systems work. There you can see the list. I don't want to read it word for word. Executive branch, legislative branch, 3, policy, elections, things like that. It has a lot of pros. It gives you the basis for government, which is very important, but it's a very narrow view of politics. It's very cold-hearted. You know, it's just facts-based. You can take an issue-centered approach. You know, it's political and focuses on social controversies, very heavy topics. You know, 3 branches, are they balanced? Is the office of the president too powerful? Free speech and assembly? Should the lines be drawn? Political parties? Is there any real differences? Those are pretty good. What's the pros? Open communication and debate. That's fantastic. You want your students to be able to communicate and, even maybe do some written things. When I did debates, they had to do the debate. They had to give me a persuasive paper, 2 grades. I thought that was both forms of communication. You have to do it. Pro, like I said, is open communication and debate. A con is open communication and debate. Mostly because I'm laughing at my same joke that I've had there for about 5 years with the smiley face. I must have just discovered emojis when I did that. But the reason why it's a con, classroom management, and I've said this, when you do these things, you've got to have organization. To me, organization is classroom management. I think you'll find if you are organized, if you are well planned, if you anticipate things, that takes care of the classroom management. It's just dealing with humans. I mean, I've sat in meetings with other professors and the classroom management is terrible because everyone's talking over everyone because no one knows what's going on in the meeting. That's just human nature. So just make sure if you're going to do something like this, make sure that it is strong classroom management. Political system debate. I almost butchered that. Political system debate. It's political behavior rather than formal government structures. The causes and inactions of population patterns are studied. I think this is actually kind of interesting. I already gave you this, but that 270 to win, I think I gave you that. If I did not, it is a great resource. I think that's the one where you can alter the maps and things. I'll pull it up here at the end just to kind of give you a show of it. But it's one that you can kind of mold maps. My students and I used to mess with it a little bit just to see what would happen in scenarios. We make predictions and who had the closest electoral map and things like that. But again, this kind of gets into, forms of authority, structures, organization and groups of voters. You might look at how people vote. West Virginia is a great one. We're most of West Virginians are registered Democrats, but it seems since 2000, we have voted pretty much Republican in presidential elections. And it seems like we're kind of tilting that way, obviously, in state elections. But again, it's just things you can look at. And we looked like that was something we looked at in my West Virginia history class. But then I was going to make a point, obviously, but clear up until 2000, most of the time West Virginia went Democrat in presidential elections. It changed in the Gore-Bush election. But again, this isn't my class. This is social studies method. It's not that. Again, just very resource oriented, cons, opinions, but research is king in that type of approach. And I guess just to make sure I reset, you're doing this political systems approach. It's more a research-based approach. It's a little more cold and calculating and looking at things straight and narrow, not to passion. Community actions, I think that's self-explanatory. That's being more firsthand, being active in the community. And a lot of civics classes require this. You get firsthand experience, which is always the best teacher. That's a very Dewey approach or way of thinking. Field trips, internships, volunteering, discussion. The Bird Center thing I talked about, they do very hands-on stuff. You get into this stuff. Very pro is it's firsthand experience, cannot be beat. The con, the basics. You need the basics to have a clue what's going on. Sorry, it's Friday, I'm burnt out. It happens. But the cons need the basics to have a clue what's going on. So that comes back to you do need your lower level blooms. You need to have that base level stuff. You're going to spend a little time laying the groundwork. But once you get there, I think, you might be very active in the community and doing stuff that's very hands-on. I used to do stuff like that. We used to do one volunteer activity, at least I taught at a school with a trimester. We would maybe go to in Martinsburg to CCAP and do food banks and work within that and, volunteer things. We would do field trips. We had a student government. That's another thing that you might get into with this. Student government is fun. It's a lot of work. I don't have it on here, and gosh, it would have been a good resource. Model UN is a fantastic program. I may have shared that on one of the resources, but I might pull that up here when I pull up 270 to win real quick. And don't forget, the living room candidate is another one we looked at under resources very early on this semester. That is basically it. As you can see, most of these approaches, they have just the base. And again, I have a feeling if you were like me, you'll probably take aspects of all of these, even though I'm kind of breaking them down, and the book does and says, this is this approach you're taking, this is the organization you're going to take. You're going to pull from all of them. I did every one of these things in some aspect. Sometimes they were just in units and things like that. Just be aware of it. Just know that you need to kind of sprinkle that stuff in. With that being said, let me pull this up. Maybe. Get rid of that. All types of stuff there, isn't there? All right. I want to show you 270 to Win. It's another resource. I will actually need to post this up on there, and I'm going to write this down so I don't forget. I'm going to put it on our site if you want it on Sakai. You can even get your own map. But as you see here, that's an ad that I'm not worried about. It has the projections right now, but you can say, well, wait a minute. Who's going to win if this goes to Trump, if that changed, or Trump won that? And you can see it starts to change the amounts. Or just in the interest of fairness, because if I'm anything, it's that I'm fair. And let's say Biden wins this, and you can see the numbers go in there, and they got to get to 270 to win. That's another thing I was talking about, these quirks. You know, if they don't get to 270, I used to always ask students, well, what will happen? And, you know, a lot of times they don't know. Of course, it goes to the House. And we actually speak, this is a little bit of a U.S. history, civics type connection, but, you know, the old John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson thing. Or if you're a fan of Hamilton, the Jefferson Burr thing went to the House. So, you know, you can get into that. But as you can see, that's 270 to win. Pretty neat stuff. And I thought I said I was going to show you all one more thing, but I guess I forgot. Oh, Model UN. I know what it was. But as you can see, boom, boom, boom. And Model UN, I'm going to maybe put up a little thing on that. I don't know if anyone, it's not a big thing in West Virginia. There are some things that do, like programs do it. I did it. This is when I was at a parochial school. That's Catholic, when I was at a Catholic school teaching. We had a lot of freedom there. I think I've mentioned this before, but I wanted to do Model UN, and they let me do it. And we went to a Model UN session, and I was blown away with how awesome it was. I think I said I would do this one week, and I never did it. I'm going to post up some of the study guides, and like they have briefing guides for it. If you've done Model UN, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They would pick fun things and topics. I will show you. I hope I can find it. It's CG. Oh, it's the GCIA Model UN. I hope I'm right. This was at George Washington University. We went down there. I think I'm right. Well, there's Model UN, but I might put this site up for you all. Sorry, I'm thinking on the fly a little bit. But as you can see, they have different Model UNs and conferences and breakdowns. I might put a video up if you want to check it out. I would say, it's nothing I would say do your first couple years, but if you go to a school and they're looking for an activity to expand upon, I think Model UN is pretty cool. You learn a lot of things about debating, briefing topics. They'll debate things. Sometimes they're not even global things. The one I was at, there was different rooms. One, they were getting into concussions in sports, and then they made it a whole global thing about how other countries approached it. The one that I did, my students, we got designated a country. Actually, we got two. We got Estonia and Canada, and we had different rooms, and our students had to approach that from that country's point of view. So it might be like prison reform, and they would go in and they would debate it. They had a blast, and they do have winners, and they score it. They even did one where someone got Bikini Bottom and SpongeBob had become corrupt and ruined because of all the pollution, so how they were going to address it, and each person got designated a SpongeBob character. The girl that got to do it in mine was I think she was Plankton. So it's fun. The one that I'm looking for, I'm sorry, I did one in George Washington University, and I'm looking to see if I have it on here. I thought I had bookmarked it, and if I didn't, there it is. Nope. Yep. Now it's down because I bet you they're not doing it this year. And people like me, I actually bothered them if they were going to do it this year. I guess they've taken it down. I will look for that. But I am definitely going to put these guides up if you want to check them out. But Model UN is a pretty cool, very civics-oriented activity. With all that being said, that is it for the week. I know you're all progressing awesomely. Oh, one more thing. Oh my gosh, I said, that's it for the week for this. I said I'd talk about the US history assignment. I didn't, sorry. All right, if you look, let me go back. I didn't even post it yet on here because I didn't want to confuse you and have it there. This is the US history assignment. You have a book, and mine is actually in my office, and I'm sorry, it's the thematic approaches to US history. That one reason I had you get that world history book and the US history one, before COVID hit, my thought process was, I think it's good for you all to see different lessons and different approaches. I'm all about having tools in your toolbox, especially when you first get out in the field. There's some really good stuff in there. And again, you might not do it verbatim, but I would pull out some of those lessons and maybe check them out. Well, one thing I want you to do to make sure that you're looking at it, I think we talked about it once we got together last week. We talked a little bit about EdTPA. So I thought this will be a good way for you to look at the lessons and also EdTPA. And if you don't mind, I'm going to turn my light on because it's getting a little dark. I don't know if that helps or not. No, it doesn't. Let me see if my computer helps a little bit. I have another computer right there. Let's see. Maybe. I think that helps a little bit. Sorry, I'll make this as fast as I can. It seems like I'm fading into the darkness. And my son wants sheets. I heard him yell that at me. But anyway, enough of my problems. You want me to finish. All right, here is your assignment. All right, the US history thematic presentation. You don't have to present this to the class. That was something I was going to have you do, but I still think you need to do the slideshow. For the thematic presentation, you will select one of the themes in the book and create a PowerPoint or Google Slides or Nearpod, some sort of presentation method. Probably PowerPoint's the easiest. And address the lesson using the EdTPA format. Now, when we got together, there were some questions. There is a handbook up. I believe it's under week 4, but I think I resent it out on the announcement board. I will double check that. But EdTPA is the capstone that you're going to do when you do your student teaching. Dr. Johnson helps you out. She does a fantastic job. She is an all-star. But you have to get a 35 on that test, and it is divided into 3 sections. It's divided into planning, instruction, and assessment. And you get scored on a 1 to 4 basis, and you have to have it add up to a 35. She'll break that down more, but I think it's really important that you start to think, or at least know, that EdTPA is out there. So I decided to make this assignment kind of centered around this. You don't need the handbook to do it. I've already got the questions in here. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick one of the lessons that's in there, and you need to say whether you think it is the planning. So whatever US history assignment that you, or thematic lesson that you pick, do you need to, give me 1 sec here, I'm sorry. Hold on. Sorry, I'm back. I paused that real quick because I wanted to check the wording on something. If it seems a little choppy, I'm sorry, that's why. Let me reset that a little bit. We're gonna do the EdTPA. Each one is set up into the instructional, the planning, and the assessment. As you can see right there, it says planning. And you're gonna answer, you're gonna set up a slide. Here's what I wanted to double check, especially because I didn't have my book with me right beside me. The book is divided into themes. So you need to pick one of the themes in the book. I don't care which. And there's multiple lesson plans related to that theme. When you go in there, you just need to answer these questions on your slide. So it literally, and you don't have to write a paragraph on each slide. You can bullet. This is not supposed to be too much torture. It's to get you thinking about the lesson, looking at the lesson, and a TPA. All right. So for example, at planning, I'm going to run through each one of these, but I'll make it quick. And then if you have questions, you're welcome to come back to me. So when you're doing this exercise, you pick your theme with the multiple lessons. You're going to look at the planning of these lessons first. So as it says, you're just going to give me your opinion. Are the lessons strong in your opinion? Why not? And you can just say weak, boom, boom, boom. Weak because no standards, not clearly defined, just a couple of reasons. It just needs to be on one slide. Do you have the overriding question for the theme? And what it is the question. Do you know what the question or what the central focus of that theme is. Do you think it's clear? If you looked at these, if you looked at those lessons independently and then put them together collectively, would you identify the theme? So if you think you would, so if you did one on, well, since we talked about civics, if you did one on the Electoral College, one on voting rights, and one on presidential elections, is there a theme? It would seem like there would be a theme there. It's somehow maybe voting or elections or the history of elections and democracy in the United States. Could you identify that? Because one thing you're going to have to do for EdTPA is when you put your lessons and submit them, they have to have a theme or a central focus. Would you be able to identify that based on those lessons? So hopefully that makes sense, but email me if it doesn't. You know, again, planning is slide 2, and these are each one. What approaches did you see, if any, that addresses various learning styles? Did the lessons or any lessons check for prior knowledge? What social studies language did the language use? Few examples are fine. And when we talk about social studies language, if you look at that handbook I sent out, social studies language will be words that are specific to social studies and maybe even action verbs. Analyze, decipher, critique, debate, discuss. Did you see any of that in any of the lesson plans? As you can see, slide 5, planning assessment to monitor student learning. What assessments did you view within the plans? It can be formative or summative. Formative will be your base level stuff, like just instant checks. Summative, of course, how are they going to conclude the final thing? Would you alter any of the assessments? That's the planning. That's the first task, what they call it. EdTPA is divided into tasks. That's the first task of EdTPA, and that's what I want you to kind of look for. Again, this is just to get you thinking about EdTPA and looking at different lessons. I'm not expecting you to memorize any of this, but EdTPA, planning. What's this? These are the questions and what you're going to be looking for when you do EdTPA. The next one's an instructional. You know, what's the learning environment? And you got to look at these questions. Do you think these lessons will allow for a positive learning environment? Meaning, can there be thoughtful discussion, sharing of ideas? Would you change anything? Again, just needs to be a slide. Engaging in student learning. Do you believe these lessons would encourage active engagement from students in terms of inquiry, interpretation, or analysis? Again, just your viewpoint. Deepening student learning. Do these plans promote student ability to reach conclusions on materials? Would you do anything different to promote this? Deepening student level, that next level stuff. Subject-specific pedagogy. Do lessons encourage students to understand and use evidence to support, make arguments, conclusions? That's a very, very, very social studies thing. Again, very civics. Analyzing teaching effectiveness. That's something that when you're instructional, and this is where the planning is a little funky. With this assignment's a little funky because you're not actually teaching the lesson. But what is one thing you know you would have to change in the lesson, speaking from an instructional point of view, to improve it for students? Like, is there something in the lesson that wouldn't work if you were teaching it? That's your second, what they call task in EdTPA, is instructional. And these are the things that you're scored on, those big headings, the learning environment and you know, engaging student learning. The last one, I don't want to get too much on there, but assessment seems to be the one I think as a whole, we don't ever seem to score as high as the other two. We still do, our students do fine, but this is, I think, of the three, seems to be our weakest one. So, you know, slide 11, you're going to analyze student learning. Do these activities in the lessons properly analyze student learning? What assessments do they use? Would you use these assessments? Provide student feedback. Do the assessments within these lessons provide for feedback opportunities? How would you provide feedback to your students if you're using any of these lessons? Again, keep it short. You don't have to write a paragraph or paper, just on a slide. Student understanding and use of feedback. How would your method of providing feedback help your students improve their social studies learning? Analyzing student language and history social studies learning. Do the assessments provided in these lessons provide students to use social studies language? Again, interpreting maps, evaluating a message, analyzing arguments, defending arguments. Does your assessment do that? Is the wording there when you write up the assessment? And I'm sorry, in these thematic lessons that you're doing. And when you're doing a TPA, do yours do that? Using assessment to inform instructions. What would you be looking for in your assessment of these lessons to help build for the future? Maybe improve student skills and your teaching skills. So do not make this hard. And I actually, if you all want to get together and talk about this, that's fine. But I just want you to do a slide on each and answer that question, and you can bullet point them. Again, this is mostly to get you to look at those thematic lessons, kind of break them down a little bit, and also start thinking about EdTPA. Like I said, there are 3. Task 1, planning. Task 2, instruction. Task 3, assessment. You do this, and this is what they're looking for when they score you in EdTPA in planning. This is what they're going to be looking for and scoring you on in instruction. And this is what they're going to be scoring you for on in assessment. I'm not going to kid you, Dr. Johnson is the EdTPA expert. I just feel like I would be doing you wrong if we don't look at this, because I think one thing that happens to a lot of students, especially when they get out in the field and they start talking about EdTPA, they haven't even heard the term. And I just think, if you just come in with just a little bit of knowledge, I think it's to your benefit. Again, we'll double check that I sent out that guide. I believe I did. Also, if you want a thematic breakdown, I did post it on the assignment. There it is in a little more detail. I thought I had it. It's going crazy. I'll make sure that I post this up in a clear fashion for you. But right there it is. Just a slideshow, just a PowerPoint, just to make sure you're looking at it. Pick your theme in your book. Look at the lesson plans. Some of them have 3, some have 4, and just kind of break them down. Just analyze them, critique them. There's no right or wrong answers. I mean, I have the book, and obviously I might see what you came up to the same thing that I thought. But just bullet point them. That's all I want. You'll give me 15 slides, and I'll be totally happy. It's not due until November 2nd. I believe that I actually changed that on the website. Let's look to make sure. Sorry, I know I do a lot of this stuff when we're talking, but it hits me. I did not change it, but I'm going to do it right now so I know it's done, because you are on top of it, and you would email me and tell me you said the 2nd and it's not saying the 2nd, and you would be 1000% correct. And I know it drives some of you nuts because I don't always catch that, but as you saw, it defaults to 5 o'clock, and I don't always remember to change that. Usually I run Sunday to Sunday. For this class, I made it Monday to Monday, just because if we ever had a meeting, we had questions. So there you go. That should be up to date. And I will put that up there. And the other thing that I said I would do was look at the announcements. And at TPA, I did not give you that book, so hold on. It is right. Not there. So week 3. I know I did it. I know I put EdTPA somewhere in there. Maybe it was week 5. There it is, EdTPA guide. I know I throw a lot at you. If we were doing this live, I would probably be throwing more at you. Here you go. I'm going to send this out and post it up on the site just in case. Oh, maybe I sent the link. Oh, there it was, the EdTPA link, but I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and put it up on here too, just in case. EdTPA guide for social studies PDF. And PDF social studies guide. And I will add announcements. And I think I just downloaded it, so let's see if I got it on there. Got all that mess there. Sorry, guys. That's not what you want. That's also not what you want. And that's what you want. Sorry, I'm working on a little low tech. And I've been recording a lot. And none of this really you care about. And you're like, I'm busy too. All right, I just sent that out to you. So if you got the email, that's fine. And Now, I believe we are 100% done. As you can see, it's getting darker and darker. My computer went away again. I'm in fall. Does that light come off? Nope, didn't. Alrighty. It's 6:30. I'm going to Sheets. I'm going to get some food. If you all have any questions, feel free to contact me anytime, especially about that U.S. history assignment. I know I buzzed through that, but that is just to get you used to a little bit with that TPA. I might try to do a little more with that later. Flipgrid is up. That deals with looking at one of the world history things. Oh, by the way, kudos to you all. You broke those ones. I gave you not a lot of time on that one Flipgrid, and you all were smart and recorded them in two, which is very teacher skilled oriented. But if you look here, just so you know, there's one on civics related to Magna Carta that it's in your world history book. So you will need that for the Flipgrid, the one that you did, the analysis and all, to make sure you're looking at some of these lesson plans. So now, with all that being said, of course, you didn't even see that screen because I didn't pull it up. There, I'll show you. There it is, the Magna Carta. That is in your world history inquiry book. Now, I'm just babbling and I'm going to Sheets. I hope you have a fantastic weekend again on Friday. At least try to get outside. I know with everything, with midterms and work, and I know some of you are athletes, it's busy, but hang in there. We'll be all done in Thanksgiving. It flies by. It's just part of teaching. Teaching is wonderful because it keeps you involved, keeps your brain going. It's also wonderful because it keeps you active and fresh, I think, up here, but it's also tiring. But at the end of the day, you get these nice breaks and you can recharge a little bit, hopefully. So have a good weekend, everyone. Talk to you later.